Thank you, Mr. Turner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And gentlemen, thank you for being here. Secretary Panetta, I want to thank you for our meeting last week with Congressman Andrews, where we discussed the issue of a national standard for custody rights for our service members. We asked you to affirm Secretary Gates and DoD's policies supporting a national standard. As you know, unbelievably, across the country, there are federal law court judges that will take custody away from our service members based upon their time away serving their country. This committee has been very active on this issue, every member of the committee having endorsed the national standard, the House having passed 5 times a national standard. We would appreciate your support and advocacy to assist us in making that law. Secondly, I appreciate your statement on the Budget Control Act and the issues of sequestration. It's a thing, as we look to sequestration, I think the American public do not know the great risk that could be imperiling our military. Your statements on it are important. It's one of the reasons why I voted against the Budget Control Act, so we would not have this gambling with our military security. Mr. Secretary, as you know, I'm the chairman of the Strategic Forces Subcommittee. Nuclear weapons fall under my category. I have 3 questions, 2 for you and 1 for the General, concerning that. Mr. Secretary, as you know, your predecessor, Secretary Gates, agreed to transfer some $5.7 billion to the National Nuclear Security Administration for specific purposes that were articulated in this document, which I asked be included in the record, that was to govern the transfer of these billions to the National Nuclear Security Administration. I would ask if you would characterize the Department of Defense level of comfort with how the initial $5 billion tranche has been spent. For example, where did DoD's $1.2 billion go that it gave to the NNSA to begin construction on the plutonium replacement facility known as CMRR? And how about the funding for the W-76 warhead, which is again delayed in the NNSA budget this year, seemingly without regard to the Navy's needs for this warhead? And secondly, Mr. Secretary, you kindly, in a correspondence in November, responded to the chairman and myself requesting that we receive briefings on the nuclear the nuclear war plan, and you had indicated that you would agree to reinstitute those briefings with our committee, though they have not commenced, and we're afraid it might be stuck in the bureaucracy of DoD. We'd appreciate your assistance there. And General, and with respect to Congressman Thornberry's question on the proposed 80% cut to our nuclear arsenal, you indicated that that these were just proposals or plans that were being reviewed, and it might be premature for discussing them. But I would like your input on the initiation of where these are coming from, because it's our understanding that the President has asked to consider an 80% cut going to a warhead inventory of somewhere around 300. If you could confirm that the administration is in fact the one that's initiating it, this is not just coming from somewhere arbitrary within the bureaucracy, that would be helpful also. Mr. Secretary.
If I could comment on your last question, this was all part of a nuclear posture review that was mandated by law, and that the administration began that process of going through the review. And the second step was basically, how do we now implement the review that was taking place? So it kind of followed that procedure. And there are a number of options that are being discussed. And as the General has pointed out, one of those options is maintain the status quo. And no decisions have been made. It has been something that has been part of a process for discussion within the national security team and remains there at this point. As you know, reductions that have been made, at least in this administration, have only been made as part of the START process and not outside of that process. And I would expect that would be the same in the future. With regards to your question on the funding issue, let me ask Bob Hale to respond to that. That's the 5.7.
We are working closely with NNSA. I think there are concerns on our part. There's too. There's been some cost growth that it sounds like you're aware of, but they are fully committed to meeting our needs, and we're trying to work with them. These are important programs, and we need to carry forward with them. I think I'll try to provide you more detail for the record, but I can tell you we have a Nuclear Weapons Council that meets regularly with NNSA representatives as well as ours, and they're deeply engaged in these issues.
But you do have concerns, correct?
Yes. And finally, let me commend your leadership on the adoption issue. We did have the chance to discuss it. I share the concern that you raised. I think it does need to be addressed. You've been successful at passing it in the House side. It doesn't seem to come out of the Senate. And I think the one thing I indicated to you is I want to work with you to see if we can actually try to get something done on this issue this year.
Thank you.